There we go. So before we dig in too much, just let's, this term sovereign recovery, we hear about, or we've been saying, like, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? So at Unchained, we provide a way for you to recover your Bitcoin if we disappear, right? We believe very strongly that you should only have to trust us the absolute minimum amount that you need to be able to interact with us as a company, right? So when we first launched our very first product, which was just loans, Bitcoin-backed loans, we actually didn't have any of this. We just had Unchained held all three keys, and you gave us your Bitcoin, and we were in control of it. And then at the end of the loan, and you paid us back, we would send it back to you, right? That was a simple way for us to get it started. But we from the beginning and have been working towards making that less and less of Unchained's in control and more either the customer is entirely in control or that we have some sort of shared control, right? So we have the multi-org vault product where Unchained holds one key, you as a customer hold one key, and then a third-party arbiter holds a key, right? For loans, we have to protect ourselves also. If you disappear, that collateral still needs to be able to move, right? So this is sort of the trust minimized way is an escrow account where you have a neutral third party. But then, when we launched vaults, there's no reason that we should be in control of your vaults. There's no reason that, that you shouldn't be fully in control. So for our customer controlled vault product, right, clients hold two keys and we hold one key. And that's a value we add to that product. But right, we don't want it such that if for some reason we magically disappear, that you suddenly you've lost your coin, right? Like we've heard that story way too many times. All the custodial products, all the exchanges, yada yada. That's just not okay by us. That's not a product I want to build. So what that means is you need a way to recover your Bitcoin if we disappear. That's a little bit, it's easy to say. It's a little bit harder to actually do. And that's what I'm going to be walking through today is we keep improving that ability for you. So the tool that we have for Bitcoin recovery, we've called Caravan, right? And if we disappear, you can take your keys and go to Caravan and move your Bitcoin, and you're in control there. And even if in a loan, if we were to try to exit scam you, we don't have control over all three of the keys, so we can't do that. And if we suddenly disappeared, you could go to that third-party arbiter and collaborate with them to recover your Bitcoin, right? So this is an important, I'd say, like very base principle for what Unchained is built on. So besides providing the tool, though, because it's really easy to say, hey, here's a tool for doing this, and then walk away, right? That's not all of it, right? We need to make sure that we give you the data that you need to be able to recover your Bitcoin. We need to make sure that this tool that we give you is open source and that you can run it on your own. And as part of being open source and all that, we need to make sure that people can bang on it and say, maybe this is a piece of crap. Maybe you guys built some backdoors into it, maybe something, right? Like you shouldn't have to trust us when we say, here is a way to recover your Bitcoin. You should be able to do that on your own, or, talk to an expert of some other variety who isn't paid by us to do that, right? So, I'm going to start off today with a demo of that, and then I'm going to dig into what this data is that we have to give you and where that comes from. So I'm going to hop over to my browser, and I'm going to take questions sort of in chunks. So I'll do a little bit of chatting and then come over and take questions, just so that we're not breaking things up too quickly. So actually, are there any questions so far over those couple of slides? Phil, do we have anything?
Yeah, one of the questions is something that I think you're gonna cover during the talk, which is just a reminder of what a BIP32 path is.
That's like 90% of the talk. So great, great question. And I will dig into that one a lot. So I hope I will definitely answer your question there. But yeah, we'll save that one for the slides about BIP32 paths. Great. Cool. Is that it? We good? Cool. Okay, so this is a demo account of mine. So I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff. This is real Bitcoin. These are real XPubs, real BIP32 paths. I am confident that you have no ability to steal my Bitcoin, and I'll explain the trade-offs of, I'm exposing all my external spend info for this demo account. What does that mean to me? Because that's a question we get a lot, is like, what do I do with this? So here's a vault. I just made this a couple days ago with a new wallet that I just spun up, blah, blah, blah. So, if you're a customer of ours, you've seen this before, yay, it's a vault. You've got some things. We can deposit, we can get our deposit address. Great, there's an address. We have a balance. We could go check this on chain if we want. We can go to our address history and see these are the addresses we've had, and these are the balances in them. Transaction history down here. Okay, great. I guess I might have missed a little point here. We've changed some of how this works, and that was the impetus for coming up with this talk today. I'm going to talk about how we used to do it and how we do it now. I'm going to focus on how we do it now first. So great. This is an account. Who cares? If you want to recover from this, without us, if you don't want to, if our website goes down, right? What do you do? This is our external spend info. We provided to you here. A little blurb says, hey, be careful with this. You can show it here. And I'm going to explain what all this is. So don't worry too much about the details at this point. But so these are the XPubs, the extended public keys, the BIP32 paths, and some other metadata that describes the vaults, the Bitcoin addresses that are this vault. Like this information right here is equivalent to, here's a bunch of addresses, right? And so we give you a way to download it, which you should do. I'll yell at you a little bit as to why you should do that, but you should do this. And great, and we have a file. We just downloaded a file. You can also, when you're looking at this, go and copy and paste these. You should, make sure that the thing you download is what we're showing you here. You should always double, triple check everything. But anywho, so that's there. So I'm just gonna open up this file real quick so you can see what it looks like. See, it's the same stuff. Here's your XPubs, some BIP32 paths. You'll notice that this one up here named Unchained, so that one we don't give you the BIP32 path for that because you're not in control of that key, right? That key, this is the key that is owned by Unchained. So you're never going to sign with that. You don't need to know the BIP32 path for it. All you need is the extended public key here, okay? And so yada yada. There's some other stuff. So let's say Unchained disappears. What do? That's when Caravan comes into play. So it's open source. Here's the GitHub repository. Great. Has all the code in there. You can see all the messy bits under the hood. And we provide a hosted version of Caravan. This is great to use. I think it is good to learn how to host this yourself. I think it's good if you're not super computer savvy to find someone who is, because and I'll be honest about this, and I know some of my coworkers get a little annoyed with me because I'm a little too paranoid about things. Like, we can change that Git repository, right? It's open source code, but we can always change it. So it's good to have a backup, is what I'm saying. So if GitHub goes down, you don't want to be in a position where you can't get to Caravan anymore, right? And so this is actually hosted by GitHub. It's just a static GitHub Pages site. It's a very simple tool that we've built here as far as websites go. But so I'm showing it to you via here, but I could also just run it locally and interact with it that way. So that's sort of another topic. We can talk about that more later if you want. Anywho, so we downloaded our wallet, our vault backup config, our extended external spend stuff. And we can just hop over here to create a wallet, and we're just going to import that wallet config file. There it is. Check that out. Looks the same. Yep. And we're going to open that up. And boom, that just loads up our XPubs, our BIP32 paths. That's basically all that's in there. Also that it's 2 of 3, right? That's one of the things. Caravan allows you to do all sorts of other fancy stuff, other shapes of multi-sig, but the Unchained products are all 2 of 3. Before we actually load this in, we need to pick a client. I'm going to use public today. You know, if you really don't want Blockstream to be aware that your addresses are related to each other, you know, then you'll want to run your own node and go through all that hassle. I know there's some packaged, like my node now is helping package this together to make this easier for folks. But for now, we're just going to hit, you know, the Blockstream block explorer. And this is just saying like, hey, I'm going to generate all those addresses because all those addresses and those extended public keys, you know, are equivalent. I'm going to generate those, and I'm going to ask the block explorer for all the histories there, right? Caravan doesn't have any of that info internally. So boom, there we go. There's our balance. Here's our balance. That matches up. Cool. This is the address that we currently have our Bitcoin in. That matches our deposit address over here. Great. If we want to see our spent addresses, right? So this is our history here. You can see the previous addresses that I've used in this account. And here's where things start to get kind of cool, is if we show 0 balances, we show the future addresses that this vault's going to use. So I'm going to take 1 second here and say, please don't use Caravan if you have a vault. Like, don't go and deposit into these. These are here. These are there for you to confirm that they're the right thing that the Unchained platform shows you. But at this point, the Unchained platform isn't, you know, paying attention to all of these addresses in the front, right? So that's some work we're going to probably do in the future, maybe at some point. But for right now, you know, we still live in a single address world on platform. And so that's important for us when you're interfacing with Unchained and, you know, the whole collaborative custody thing there. So we're giving you power here, but right now it's off label to go and, you know, send stuff over here or transact with Caravan, right? This is a recovery tool, right? So we can chat more about that, but like, just to be aware, like we're giving you tools. Please don't please don't break things right now. So what's cool about this is, and this is one of the new improvements that we have, is if I come back to my vault and I start a withdrawal, we'll just send it to this address here. Next, what can I say? I can say I'll take out that amount. Great. Next, we're going to sign with my keys. Next, everything looks good. Great. Great withdrawal. Cool. Okay, so when we're doing a partial withdrawal like this, right, we're taking Bitcoin out of one address and we're sending it to the external address, and then we're sending the rest of that, the leftover, the change, to another address in this vault, right? And previously, this download information would be a redeem script, and you would need to go and take that information right then and then go and confirm it and make sure that, okay, my keys are in control of this, you know, if you wanted to check all those boxes. But what's cool about the new architecture that we have is that this address is, you already know that address is right here, right? Like, you can already see it. You might notice that we skip an address here. You'll see that from time to time. I think with some improvements in the future, we'll start not skipping addresses. But for now, you can see this. You can see, great, here's my change address. You can hop over to Caravan and see, okay, yeah, look, that actually, this Caravan says that this address is part of this vault, right? And you can get even more in depth. If you're using a Trezor, you can come over here and say, I want my Trezor to tell me that it is in control of a key for this address, right? So pop that open, we'll select a key, we'll say, hey Trezor, you'll see here's a BIP32 path. This is a BIP32 path specifically for this address. And again, I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm gonna hit confirm, and I have this random dev device or demo device over here, blah, blah, blah. It says, let's export some things. I punch in my incredibly secure PIN. And now you can't see this, but what I'm seeing right now is this, right? So it's showing me, here's an address, and here's a BIP32 path, and it's saying I'm aware, I have this BIP32 path corresponds to a key that is in this address, and I'm in control of it. So now I know that my Trezor actually can sign for this address, right? So that's a pretty strong statement to make, right? And so you can do that with all these addresses, right? Because again, we're dealing with this on a browser, on a networked machine, yada yada. You should be, you know, a little paranoid. But if you can get your Trezor to print that same address, or that same address with the BIP32 path you're expecting, like that's pretty good. So yeah, so that's my demo right now for how you, you know, download your external spend info, how you load it into Caravan. If we have time, I can show you how you would load that into Electrum, because this same, you know, these same XPubs and BIP32 paths, you can use those actually to have, Electrum is able to also recover your wallet that way. So, you know, it's a little bit different, but you know, we're not locking you into our tool either, right? Like we want to make sure we give you enough information. So if you want to go to Electrum, or you want to go to some other wallet that, you know, somewhat supports these standards, or build your own, that you can, right? You don't have to even rely on the tool that we build. I think that's an important point. So just as, let's just check and make sure I said everything I was planning to on the demo. So yeah, I demoed an existing vault, the current external spend info, the change address external spend info. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned while you're back over here, how do I cancel this? There we go. Let's just cancel that. Right. If you want to, like if you've been using redeem scripts and, you know, we're not taking that ability away from you, you can still come to your old addresses here and you can still see your redeem scripts. This is the old external spend flow here, right? This is your external spend, or this is your redeem script, and these are the BIP32 paths for those devices that get you to those public keys. So that's still available. What your external spend info is, yes. How to load stuff into Caravan, yes, we did that. How you would use Caravan to recover your Bitcoin, I mean, right, we can see this, we can send this. This is just basically a wallet now, and this will pull from the address that currently has your Bitcoin over there. How to confirm your addresses on a Trezor, yes, and I'll show you Electrum later if we have some time. But so that concludes the demo portion. I'm going to talk a little bit about like what's changed, a little bit more about what's changed with the new architecture and how you want to store your recovery info. But maybe let's take a second and take some questions. Phil, you got anything?
Yeah, so there was one question that I think would be worth it to just kind of say out loud to everybody. Paul asks, my download button says Caravan and opens Caravan and doesn't yet give me the JSON. I think the question is, how do I move from the old architecture to the new architecture?
Yes, great question that I completely skipped over. So over here, when I was showing you my vault, this vault's brand new. So this is after we created the new architecture. If you still, when you go to your external spend info, if you see the redeem script, that means the address that is currently holding your Bitcoin is still on the older architecture that was using the redeem scripts for recovery and not using these XPubs for recovery. So it's related to the address itself. So what you want to do is make a small withdrawal or a small transfer or something to get onto a new address. So, you know, I would recommend just a tiny withdrawal to some other random wallet or something, or, you know, if you have two vaults, do a you know, a tiny transfer over to one of your other vaults or whatnot. When you do that, your change address, the little button next to your change address, that'll have extended public keys right there. So at that point, even before you execute the transaction, you could take that and then go load it into Caravan and then see that that change address is good, do confirm on device, all that good stuff. Yeah, great question that I completely glossed over. So anything else, Phil?
If I could just add to that answer real fast, is that
Sure.
there's nothing wrong with your old
Yes.
it being the address. You can still recover, you can still do all the things. One of the biggest benefits of this new architecture is that in the old world, you would have a redeem script, but every time you transacted and got a new address, you would get a new redeem script. So you had new information to secure. In this world, once you're on XPubs, as long as the keys are staying the same, you'll just have to download that information once. You can transact as many times as you want, and that external spend information will always be the same. If you change keys or something like that, yeah, and I'm sure Destry will get into that. But just letting you know that like nothing is wrong with your system right now. You just haven't moved to the new address.
Great point, Will. Anything else, Phil? Should I keep going?
Yeah, I think we can continue for now. There's a good question that we can save for the end.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, Will totally segued there into my next slide a little bit. So quickly, like what hasn't changed between the old redeem script architecture and the new extended public key architecture is you still have external recovery info. You had a version before, you have a slightly different version now, but you still have it. Caravan will still spend it. We haven't taken away or added the ability to do external recovery, right? Like we had that before, we have it in the future. You can still see that for your change addresses, which is important since that's an address that we're generating or we're showing you. So you still have external spend information for that. You still need to store that external spend info. And I think that's my next slide is hammering on that a little bit more. Your account keys haven't changed, right? You don't need to come and upload any new keys. You don't need to do anything with your devices. Yeah, we're still using the same account keys, and we haven't done anything on chain as far as like we're not authoring any transactions, anything like that. You do need to do a transaction to get to a new address to take advantage of the this new style of info. But like we're not doing that, right? That's on you to make a transaction, right? So I think that's important to know all those things. But what's improved, because there's a reason that we put in this work. And Will said the biggest one, in my opinion, is that you don't need to download new external spend info for every address, right? In the past, you needed a redeem script for every single address. And every time you got a new address, you needed to get a new redeem script and you needed to save that, right? That was fine back when loans don't have many transactions, right? Like the loan over a loan term, okay, you might have one or two transactions, right? So backing up your external spend info for a loan, fine if you have to update it every time there's a new address. But for vaults, that's not so great if someone's transacting often, right? And so that was one of the big reasons that we needed to make this change was for your vault now, as long as you don't change your keys, your external spend info does not change. And because of that, you can confirm your addresses very easily. You don't need to load in for each address. Also, if you wanted to share that external spend information, you could share that for one vault. You don't have to share it for multiple vaults. You don't need to expose your account keys. You could just expose the external spend info for one of your vaults. Like, say you want to give that to some sort of lawyer or somebody to deal with inheritance or whatever, and you're like, hey, here's my backup info, right? Like that's just for a specific vault or a specific loan. It doesn't have to be for all of your vaults. Say if you want to partition that out in some way or save that in different places. And you don't have to update it again. You can just be like, here's one file, and then know that person can see your could find your vault if they needed to on chain. This is definitely getting us into a better place for compatibility with other wallets, specifically for Coldcard. Coldcard kind of requires this. There's a way to sort of hack around it, but the right way to use Coldcard requires this architecture. So this was one of our steps towards supporting Coldcard, I know. I know some folks want that. We're working on it. And another future thing, which I don't think we have yet, because I don't think all devices support it yet exactly, but we're working on it, is your hardware device can actually confirm that the change address is actually owned by the device while you're signing the transaction. There's been some ups and downs with that. I think there were some bugs in that feature for a little while, but I think those are mostly gotten worked out. But that'll be a nice thing also for usability, where, if you're doing a transfer, you're like, yes, I want to transfer to here, and then yes, I want the rest to go to a change address that is in the same vault as where I'm sending from, and actually see that on device. Like, that again is a pretty solid bit of security there. So let's take a second and talk about external spend info and why you want to store it and how you want to store it. Not having your keys, just your keys are not enough to spend from a multi-sig address. You need those BIP32 paths for your device. So yeah, you need it. Otherwise you won't be able to recover your Bitcoin if we disappear, right? Like, we store all of this information, but again, you want to protect yourself. Previously you had to do this with redeem scripts, but now you just have the one file. So the question is, how do you want to store it? Losing it is bad, but losing it is worse than exposing it, I think, is the point here. So however you store it, make sure you don't lose it first, because then you lose the ability to recover your Bitcoin, right? So that is huge. What are the repercussions of it being exposed? Leaking it is that it ties those addresses together, right? So anyone who had access to that file, right? Like, boom, I just showed you my XBubs for my vault. Like, what can you do with that, right? You can see that all of the addresses that are ever used in that vault for all eternity, as long as I don't change the keys, are all associated with each other, right? So it's not exactly de-anonymizing you, but it is tying your addresses together, right? So it's part of de-anonymizing. There's also, if someone were to steal your keys, they would need this information to also steal your Bitcoin out of your vault. I don't think so. I know there was a question earlier about like storing backup seeds and this and that. As someone who thinks about these things, while I will tell you that without this you can't recover your Bitcoin, I won't say that without this someone couldn't steal your Bitcoin if they had your keys, right? You could still brute force your way around some of this space and figure figure things out. So I wouldn't say that losing your keys but keeping this file keeps you safe, right? So I would not use this as part of your security apparatus for securing your vault. So you still want to protect your keys like your keys, and then you don't want to lose this. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you how to store it. I think that's a personal decision to make. But I will say that because it's already on a networked computer, it's not the same sort of security as like your wallet words, right? Which should never be typed in anywhere. So, something like a password manager may be appropriate for you for this, because it's already been on your computer. So, you don't want to be tweeting it, but you also don't want to lose it. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the technical stuff. Any questions filled around that out?
Sure. HD has a question. Can I use Caravan as a recovery tool for my Casa multisig? Thought I saw this somewhere.
Great question. Great question. I have not done it. I believe it is possible. I don't know exactly the information that they give you now for recovery. I believe they give you extended public keys. I believe you might have to request the extended public key that they are in control of. I forget exactly. It's changed a little bit from the last time I checked in on this. But So I can't say yes in that I haven't tested it. But we're using very similar information. So I don't know, Phil, you haven't done it yourself recently, have you?
I haven't done it myself, but I did see somebody on Twitter try it out, and they were able to generate their wallet balances, and that was through pasting in extended public keys directly into Caravan. And then I think you also need the pathways. Is that correct, Destry?
Right.
Or is it just the XPubs?
Hmm?
Is it just the XPubs, or is it also the XPubs and the pathways?
To sign, you'll need the BIP32 paths. So just the XPubs won't get you to signing. I think that they have a rigid structure for their BIP32 paths. So as long as you look that up, I think then you could just figure out your BIP32 paths without having to write them down.
So this, I guess,
constrain you.
The answer to this question is yes, if you are provided with XPubs and BIP32 paths.
And I would love for someone to confirm that. So yeah, but in theory, yeah, it wasn't built for that, I will say. So I can't say that it'll continue to do that going forward either. Definitely not. We're definitely not providing that. So, so yeah, so with caution, maybe. Cool. Okay, so now can I get down to the nerdy stuff? We good? Great. Okay, so I want to talk about the stuff I actually work on and think about all the time, which is like BIP32 paths, extended public keys, how we derive addresses, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not doing great on time, so I'll try to keep this succinct but also useful. So don't be scared by this if this looks like a lot. So BIP32, the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal number 32, was an improvement to Bitcoin, although this actually has nothing to do with consensus. This only has to do with keys, although Bitcoin D, like the core code, does actually use this now for its key generation. What this does is it allows you to have more than one public and private key pair derived from one set of information. So back in the old days, Bitcoin D, every time you needed a new address, it'd go, hold on, let me come up with a new random key, and then here's a new address, and I'm gonna hold on to this private key, and I'll just have like a big old list of private keys, right? And you just have this huge list, and you need to back up all of those private keys every time, right? So that was fine, but it's messy. It's hard to back up. You have to back it up every time you have new addresses. And where this really comes in is hardware wallets, because asking a hardware wallet to create a new address, create a new random private key every time, like you get into all sorts of issues with what is safe for randomness. So what this does is it takes a chunk of data, generates a private key out of it, private public key, and then it allows you, there's an algorithm that safely will take that one key and then derive another key from it. And by safe, I mean, just if you have this key, you can't figure out what the key is above it for the private, or you can't go that way. There's a little bit of an aside there, but I'm gonna skip that for now. So that's pretty cool. One, right, is you can have your wallet words. Your wallet words actually live sort of back here. They generate, you use your wallet words to encode your entropy that then is used to create this first root key. And then from that, you can generate new keys. So again, you're allowed to generate keys from other keys. When I say key here, I'm also talking about an extended key, which is very different than your public and your private keys when you're just dealing with normal old, Bitcoin signing. Is an extended key is not, it includes your public or your private key, but it also includes some other information. This what's called a chain code, which is basically a glob of data that's used in this algorithm here and changes all the time between each of these. And then there's some other metadata just about like where it doesn't actually include, what's annoying is it doesn't include the actual full BIP32 path in there. it includes just a little bit of information about that, sort of for validating sake. So the other very, very, very cool part about this is that this tree structure where you can take one key and derive another key from it, you can do this with both private keys and public keys, and they follow along, right? So if I have a private key here and I give you the public key version of that, right, and then you derive down here to a new key, I can do the same thing with my private key and still get the private key for the public key that you derive down here. So that's a super important principle that allows us to do a lot of what we do. And that's just math that allows you to do that. But it's cool because then you can share one level, you know, any of the public keys along here, you can share them, and then, which is what you're doing with us, is you're sharing an account key. And then from that, we are deriving more public keys, but we don't need the private key to do that. But you still have the private keys for all the keys that we derive, right? So it's that asymmetry there that makes this powerful. So how do we do that? Is the question that I want to kind of dig into a little bit. Oh, first, sorry, yeah, a BIP30. So when we talk about a BIP32 path, what is that? So that is the how we derive down this tree. Sorry. So for each key, you can derive multiple keys. It's not even just like, here's one key, I can derive another key, I can derive another key. It's actually from each key, you can derive many, many keys. And from each of those, you can derive many, many keys, right? And there's actually 2 to the 32 keys here from this one, right? So you can say, here's one key, give me the, 10,000th one over here. Boom, okay, great. And then from that one, I can grab the second key from that, and then this key from that. And so that's, when we're talking about a BIP32 path, that's the path that you would follow to reach the key down here, right? Like down at the bottom, right? So another, right? And there's many, many BIP32 paths that you could follow, because there's many, many keys that can be derived from this main key. And the reason why I'm like, you need your BIP32 path to do anything is this number here, the number of keys you can derive is, it's a big number in that, like, it's not you can't search this space, right? Like there are more keys in here than there are BIP32 or like Bitcoin addresses, right? Which is already an insanely large number of addresses, right? So it's not a searchable space. You can't brute force your way through this if you're using the whole thing. The thing is, most people use very standard paths down here, so you can kind of brute force your way at it a little bit, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you need to do that, right? So, because again, each key can derive 2 to the 32 keys, which each can derive 2 to the 32 keys, which each can derive 32 keys. And our paths, I think we're depth 5 or 6. So that's like 6 times of that. So yeah, so that's what a BIP32 path is. Questions about that before we get on to how we pull keys and make addresses? Phil, anything?
We don't have any open questions in the Q&A, but maybe we'll give, why don't you keep going, and then if people do answer or ask questions, then we can answer them later.
Nice. Okay. So now, how do we build a vault, or how do we build addresses here at Unchained? So first you need to upload an account key, right? So that's a public key that comes from your device at a BIP32 path that you actually can choose. We have a default that we suggest, but you're able to choose a different path if you want, right? You want to do this once per device, but say, boom, okay, great. This from my Trezor one here, I'm gonna grab a key from my other Trezor. I'm gonna grab another key. And then Unchained over here has, a key that it's uploaded previously as well, right? And these don't need to be at the same place in the BIP32 space. They're just keys that were pulled directly off of a device, okay? and you should do one per device. don't use one device and upload one key and then change the BIP32 path and upload another key. You can do that, but you shouldn't. So that's how we create account keys. And so now here's where it gets cool is we can take the keys here that we pulled and now use those instead of the device. We put those up at the top here and derive down from them, right? So these are now your account keys. And so when we make up a new vault or transition to the new architecture in the case of a vault that's already existing, we go to each of your account keys and say, okay, now give me a new key that's derived from that key that hasn't been used before, right? And that's an important part, is that we don't want to reuse these keys. You know, you don't want to be sharing those keys across vaults. And so these keys won't all be at the same, won't have the same path, even from account key to vault key, right? So that'll still be like, okay, well, this account key hasn't been used in a vault before, so we'll just grab this first one. But maybe this account key was used in a couple other vaults, so we need to grab a different key derived from that, right? And for Unchained's key, well, yeah, that one over there was probably used for some other vault, so that's going to be somewhere totally else, right? So now we have 3 extended public keys at very different, maybe very different BIP32 paths. But these are what we are going to derive addresses from now, right? And these are specific to a particular vault, and they are not used across other vaults, right? And so this is your external spend info, or these keys themselves, right? So now that we have these, and don't worry, I'll like review this in a way that's a little bit more succinct if you're starting to glaze up. From these, we derive addresses. And for that, because we know these keys haven't been used before and aren't going to be used anywhere else, we can follow a very specific path to get to an address. So for all 3 of these, they follow the same path to it: 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. You know, for the next address, 0, 2, 0, 2, 0, 2. And that's what allows us to generate those addresses on Caravan, because it's deterministic. We know that all 3 keys are going to go to the same place to get that last address key, right? And so this is the reason why the redeem scripts of old didn't work. Why you needed to download it differently every time was we didn't have this vault specific setup. So you couldn't just say, okay, I know exactly where I'm going for this vault. And then now that we've got that, right, so we actually are driving extended public keys here, but now we just need the public keys when we're dealing with Bitcoin addresses. So we just hack out the public keys. Cool. We've got 3 public keys at 3 crazy BIP32 paths. We take those 3 public keys, we make a redeem script with it. That redeem script is a multi-sig address, and now we made it to address land. Yay! I know that might feel a bit contorted to get there. So now remember when I did that confirm on device back when we were in Caravan? What we're doing there is we're saying, hey Trezor, here's a BIP32 path. Here's an address that has some public keys in it. Are you sure that you are in control of that? And here's some other keys or some other extended public keys. Can you actually generate the whole address given the information that I'm passing to you? But make sure you Trezor are using your own data for that one key that I'm interested in, right? So that's what, when we're saying confirm on devices, we're giving it the other information from the other keys and saying, here's where I think the key is for this address, and then Trezor actually does this step on the device where it generates the redeem script and generates the address, right? So it's a very trustless protocol there. So here's the review. So just to bring it back a little bit of how we do this. So we have our account key, right, which is 1 BIP32 path, right? And that is coming off the device. The vault key adds one more step to that BIP32 path, and this is per vault. So you have your account key, 1 per device, and then for each vault, we derive a new vault key off each account key. And then from your vault key, we derive many address keys. And those add 2 more steps on that path. And then your address is made of the 3 address keys that we pulled, that we generated, right? So again, you have 3 vault keys, those stay static. That's your external spend info. And then we use those to generate address keys, which create your addresses. So that's the wrap up for me of like how the whirlwind of BIP32 and extended public keys. I can definitely dive way more into that, but only if folks are interested and have questions and have time. So yeah, Phil, anything?
We don't have any. Oh, we just got a new. That wasn't really a question, but just thanking you for the demo.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, we had a question that was asked previously by Ron. Does Caravan or will Caravan align with the PSBT format?
Absolutely. It's literally what I'm coding like today. Yeah, we're getting there. You know, sort of. It's funny to say we're a conservative company, but we're a little conservative with the tech, you know, like we're, you know, just because something is new off the presses, we're not going to jump over to it, you know, like we're kind of a bank in that way, right? And so, you know, we like PSBT. We've been aware of PSBT forever. We've been paying attention to it, but, you know, it doesn't change our base product to add it, but we're getting there finally. So we need it for Cold Card. You know, we need it for other wallets are now starting to really start to use it. We haven't needed it for Trezor and Ledger, right, which is the devices we've supported. So, but yeah, I literally I was working on that yesterday between making these slides, and then I'll probably work on that a little bit this afternoon. So, and
Destry, for the group, why don't you just give like a high level overview of what PSBT is?
Okay, so PSBT stands for partially signed Bitcoin transaction, which is actually a terrible name. No offense if who's in the audience, because it doesn't have to be partially signed. It can be unsigned or it can be fully signed. It's a way to pass around more information than what's in a standard, just like a Bitcoin transaction, right? Like you can copy a blob of just, you know, the hex Bitcoin transaction that you would see on chain, right? You can copy that and pass that around. And that's kind of what we pass around when we ask a Trezor to sign. But we also include other data when we ask a Trezor to sign or a ledger, right? For like a ledger, you pass, you know, you're like, here's the inputs and the outputs, and here's some information about those inputs, and here's, you know, like here's like the whole transaction of each input, you know, where that it's referencing. And anyway, there's all this stuff, right? And so, the formats are very different between Trezor and Ledger and other wallets when you do that. So PSBT is a way to standardize that, so that you have the transaction, just like what would end up on chain, but then you also have your XPubs, right? Like that's the thing you can include in a PSBT. And you can include BIP32 paths, and you can include the inputs, the previous transactions that those inputs are referencing. You can include all that in there, and it's all standardized and then jammed together into one serialized blob of data that's easier to pass around. And then there's all this sort of protocol for how, like, if I'm giving you an unsigned version of this and you are a signer, you have steps that you take and then you sign and then you pass it back to me. And then if I want to combine several of these that each have a signature, that makes me, you know, I'm the combiner and I combine them together, right? And so there's on top of the serialization, there's this whole protocol thing for passing them back and forth. But yeah, good question. Nice. We'll get there soon. Pretty soon, actually, probably. Yeah, I'm excited to work on that one.
All right, and it looks like we're right at the hour mark right now. So maybe one last question, if there is any, we can give it just a second. Otherwise, thank you everybody for showing up and for asking the great questions. We're looking forward to doing more of these webinars as we kind of move forward, both technical as well as Bitcoin economics style webinars. So thanks so much for attending, everyone. Yeah, looks like we don't have any further questions, so we'll wrap it up.
Sounds
But
good.
thanks a lot, everyone.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.